Okay, part 3 of perspective, we're going to do observational quick sketching.
Alright, so you're probably sick of drawing through a picture frame by now because, that's not what most artists use. How do you get the perspective to translate from the real world to the paper without using glass or tracing? Cole suggests is actually setting up your canvas, ideally on an easel. I don't have one, unfortunately. But, setting it up on an easel and then literally looking at the lines you want to translate and carrying them across and marking them off on your canvas. And then you, as the artist, have your paper set up in front of it, and you're just going to treat it like your glass. And you use your pencil to bring across that marking. Okay, so you're just marking where things are. You do this for all the important ones, right? And then you just drag them across. And this is the beginning of the mathy stuff, yeah? And that's what a lot of perspective teachers neglect, is the fact that this should all be based off of real-world observation. Otherwise, what's the point? So you bring all these lines across, and then, you do the simple ones, right? That one's very simple and straightforward. And then there's going to be some where you have to get, the angle, so your proportions are correct. So if I want to draw the width of this, sure, I can, guesstimate, or I can catch the angle. You hold out your pencil, you catch the angle between the two, and then you bring it back, right? And because that angle is correct, so will the proportions of this. Then we get our angle the same way. Oh, measure that angle from there, obviously, but I'm just pretending that this is the real thing. Measure that angle across, okay. Measure the next one. And then that one's pulled down. And we'll get more into why we're, not worrying about these lines later. But for now, let's just pretend that all these vertical lines are perfectly vertical. And then, we just start connecting things. Do you feel like you could do this? Because that's your homework. Do this. Draw your room or draw an object in your room, okay? And just do it based off of observation alone. Build those observational skills. And I don't care if you're on a tablet. I don't care if you're on paper. You can do this. This still works with a tablet.
Like and follow my channel so you get all the updates on my videos that I'm putting out, and do a whole series, and you're going to be so good at perspective, everyone's going to be jealous of you.
Every bump gets a shadow, and every hole gets a highlight. Every action has a reaction, and if you put it all together, that's texture.
don't say please, I don't say thank you, I just do what I want. And if you want to get with me, you better have what I want. I don't say please, I don't say thank you, I just do what I want. And if you want to get with me, you better have what I want. I don't say please, I don't say thank you, I just do what I want. And if you want to get with me, you better have what I want. I don't say please, I don't say thank you, I just do what I want.
Na festa do fim de semana, só um rolê bom. Ela chega e desencana com passo bem show. Na festa do fim de semana, só um rolê bom. Ela chega e desencana com passo bem show. Na festa do fim de semana, só um rolê bom. Ela chega e desencana com passo bem show. Na festa do fim de semana, só um rolê bom. Ela chega e desencana com passo bem show.
To really use perspective. What I'm going to show you is a little bit of how perspective can actually effectively be used in storytelling, because that's essentially the idea. We want to tell stories as illustrators, as designers. We want to immerse the audience in what we're trying to tell. So if we do a little scene, and let's say we pick a pizza delivery guy. So we have these frames, and we're going to essentially do 3 different lenses. One of them is what we call a wide angle lens, so wide angle. One of them is called a standard lens, which is like a 50mm lens. The last one would be a long lens. What that means is that we create different moods in each frame while telling the same story. So when we look at a wide angle, it usually relates to either a 3 or 5 point perspective. We create something that has a very wide angle feeling, and the reason we do that is to sort of give a sense of a lot of information in one scene. So we have this guy, and then we could have another guy standing over here, just maybe looking at him. And you quickly start to realize the power as well of being able to draw mannequins in space in different orientations. What this allows us to do, this sort of wide angle lens, is it allows us to pull in a lot of information in one frame. It's usually why it's used to sort of either get up and close to a certain subject and still, show a lot of the information around, or a lot of the environment around the subject. It's not only used in this case, usually a wide angle lens will be used in establishing shots. Now a 50mm or 35 to 50mm is very close to what we see with our eyes. And so that means that we're bringing the subjects in closer, and we get a more personalized feeling of the scene. It almost feels like we are a part of the scene, and it sort of immerses us more into the scene. So as you can see, it gives us a different feeling, and because we're essentially putting things at eye level, it's more like we're witnessing the scene. We're part of the scene. We are no longer spectators. We are involved in the scene. And then the last one is more of a long lens, and this is a very graphic lens. We're putting the camera way back and then zooming in literally, and everything flattens out. So our perspective kind of gets smushed. So it's more like we're creating a 1-point perspective or a very flat 2-point perspective with the vanishing points wide apart. There hardly be any depth. It'd be more like we're just seeing things very, very close to each other. You would almost no longer feel a lot of distance between the two characters. They would sort of feel like they're exactly in the same plane. Point of the composition would more likely be about framing. So when you look at directors like Wes Anderson, they love using this. They love using longer lenses, sometimes also some anamorphic lenses, to really get that graphic feeling, to sort of play with the composition, right? It's more about playing with the elements in the scene instead of trying to focus on depth and all of that. It's more about how do my characters relate to each other in the scene, and where can I see leading lines, and where can I frame, like this subject is framed in here, and then this subject is framed in here, and then we can pull in some focal points. They might even change the scene to include like frame or a window behind this guy because we're creating a flat thing and it's framing him. So as you can see, we're creating a lot of different use cases for the same scene, right? It's the pizza delivery scene, but you can use perspective in a very creative way, like a cinematographer would, to create different results and different feelings and different moods. Once you start detailing this and adding color and lighting, you just elevate that scene. But as I say, it all starts with good fundamentals.
Lines don't just create darker areas or outline a subject. They are used to describe form. The direction of your lines describe the direction that the plane of that object is facing. Notice here how the bottom of the nose and the side of the nose have lines drawn in different directions. Those lines sculpt out the form's direction. By drawing horizontal lines under the nose describes that the bottom of the nose is facing downward, while the diagonals on the side of the nose or around the muzzle of the mouth describe its respective facing direction. I just dropped a new course called Drawing Drills, where I go over all of the drawing drills I've used for decades to strengthen my hand, gain confidence in my line, and better understand how to use line to describe form. Tap through my profile to go check out the course.
Foreshortening is actually pretty easy. All you gotta do is start with two spheres, right? And then slowly start bringing them together. And then start blending them together, right? And then start making one bigger than the other. And little by little, start stretching them out. And then you get that basic foreshortening aspect. But now you can make it really extreme. And you start getting those foreshortening effects that you might really want. See what I mean? So it just takes combining two shapes together and overlapping them to be able to get foreshortening.
You need to learn these 3 perspective depth techniques. Technique number 1, crossed boxes. To find the center of any rectangular form, we draw diagonal lines from corner to corner. This applies equally well to any rectangular shape seen foreshortened. If we draw a diagonal point through the halfway point, we get the same square transposed along our scale. This technique allows us to easily create a sense of depth, sending equal-sized squares back in space towards a vanishing point. This vertical scale will do equally well for level surfaces. Simply extend lines from the bottom of each post and find the same spacing, but this time horizontally on the ground. Technique number 2, scale division. If we see line 1 to 3 and carry it back towards a receding point, then we can find another point 2 on that line and draw a foreshortened line. To divide the line 1 to 2 with the same divisions of 1 to 3, we just bring those points back towards the vanishing point. Their intersections make the divisions. However, what's more likely is that we will have a line that we don't know how to divide. In this case, draw the vanishing point and then extend towards the corners from there, leaving an extra bit so that it is parallel to the first point. Then extend a horizontal line from 1 across, and now you may divide this line, which will be facing us, into its equal divisions, which then, when we pull back towards the vanishing point, will create perfect foreshortened divisions of whatever variation we needed. Technique number 3, diagonal vanishing points. Knowing what we do about parallel lines converging at a vanishing point, we can see the diagonals that cross through a rectangle as converging at a vanishing point. This vanishing point will be above or below the existing vanishing point depending on which direction you draw the diagonal. If you continue alternating vanishing point diagonal to vertical line, you will get a division receding towards the vanishing point. Let's say you want to alternate between 2 units. Let's call them 1s and 2s. You may do this if you want to set up windows or arches in a building you're drawing. We do this using the same principle as before, but when we don't have the space on the page, we can create a secondary vanishing line and use the boxes created by that to find our diagonals. There will be two sets of vanishing points because there are two different units to be measured, the ones and the twos. Once again, we continue alternating between the diagonal points and the vertical columns to create the divisions needed. Note that the vertical comes from the crossing of that line we added because that's where the diagonal vanishing points are referencing. So I'm going to finish out this drawing, but if any of this was confusing, feel free to leave a comment and I'll explain it further. Like and follow for more perspective videos, and remember,
have you ever struggled adding foreshortening into your drawing? If so, I can help you. Foreshortening is just another rule of perspective, and the rule that it falls into is the rule of the vanishing point. What the vanishing point does is that it shows the idea of depth and distance.
How? By giving you a trajectory of the object's height from being pretty close to pretty far away.
And cool thing is, you could control the level of foreshortening by increasing the trajectory's height, making the object seem bigger when it is close and smaller when it is far. Let's try and add foreshortening into this guy's right arm. Instead of drawing his hands as parallel lines, you want those lines to point towards one another. Then add the front side of the box and later draw the side view of his arms onto the side area of the box, making sure the upper area of the arm and the forearm can fit in that side view. Now last step is to add the front side of his hands onto the front side of the box. And voila!
Build me up, buttercup baby, just to let me down. You mess me around and then worst of all, you never call baby when you say you will. But I love you still, I need you.
The colors that you wear can make people perceive you in different ways. So today I'm wearing an all black look, even down from my trousers to my sandals. Also, these are so comfortable. So the color that we're doing today is the color black, and it's one of my favorite colors in the sense that you can really style it with a lot of different pieces. Also, you see like my puffer jacket always back there because I keep it in my office. Okay, so black is actually symbolic of a few different things. So the color black can actually convey mystery, power, elegance, and sophistication. It actually can provoke a few emotions, including sadness and anger. So along with this, a lot of companies actually use the color black to show sophistication and elegance, to really promote a luxurious, nicer brand. So if you want to appear more put together, more elegant, more powerful and bold, black is a really good color. Black is actually really good if you have a big presentation or conference coming up because it allows you to appear as if you know more than maybe you actually do. You'll notice a lot of black clothing being worn by people in leadership positions such as principals, lawyers, managers. If you want to be taken more serious and be perceived as more luxurious, sophisticated, black is a really good color. If you want to learn more about the psychology of other colors, follow and like for more psychology tips and tricks.
Here's how to clean Artist Blending Tools. An Artist Sanding Block is made to sand off the dirtied surface of a blending stump. It also helps to sharpen its point and soften its surface. Using warm water and hand soap, hand wash your chamois until clean. In a separate bowl, submerge your chamois in a solution with water and a hydrating oil to restore its softness. Don't use oils made for oil paint like linseed oil, as it'll only dry it out. Then hang it to dry. Knead your kneadable eraser in the palm of your hand with some dishwashing soap. Submerge it in warm water periodically, kneading it some more until it appears clean. Once most of the stains are removed, dry off your eraser and reshape it.
This is how I blend color pencils. I start shading with the darkest area and the shadows of the skin. This will create a depth on your drawing to help you blend easier. And it's best if you're applying a light pressure because you will need a lot of layering. After shading the dark areas, I will start to layer it with another pencil. This time, I'm using a much lighter pencil. I layered it and overlapped the colors to each other to create a blending effect on the paper. You can add multiple colors while layering as long as it matches your reference. After layering, I move on to the burnishing stage, using the lightest color to smooth and blend all the layered colors together. During this step, I apply slightly more pressure, but not too hard, to allow for additional colors if needed. I use a circular motion to avoid visible strokes on the paper, enhancing the blending effect. Constantly adjusting pressure while blending is crucial. I also recommend sharpening pencils regularly for better precision and control. I'm using MyArtscape color pencils, which have an oil-based core designed for smooth blending. These pencils have a soft core, making them suitable for achieving seamless blends. You can use any brand of color pencils, whether they are expensive or cheap. The key is understanding how to use them effectively. I can give you all the tutorials that you want, but if you're not doing the work, this will be all useless. If you wish to follow this tutorial, be prepared to invest a significant amount of time and patience. This technique is not suitable for everyone. You can also check out my Facebook page, where I will be posting my artworks. I hope this video is helpful, and remember to enjoy drawing. Peace out.
How to draw faces using only a 4-color ballpoint pen. Start with orange. Use green for darkest areas. Layer it with red. Use blue for cooler tones. Hope it helps.
The palette. The piece. Outline the body. I like to do almost a halter top shape for the chest to show gravity. The neckline may be lower for bigger shirts depending on fit. Looser fitting shirts tend to have longer sleeves. Erase lightly starting at armpit. The fabric will drape over the chest so you won't see much of it depending on the size of how the fabric gathers at waist and hips. You can shade under tatas to show how the fabric is lifted off the rest. Shirts have more defined outlines and smaller folds. Tight shirts are usually stretchy. Erase lightly at waist. Tight shirts will hug almost all the torso, including right under tatas. Feminine cut shirts also have short sleeves. More lines to show tightness. You can shade where the fabric is on the opposite side of lighting here. Thanks for watching. Hope this helped.
What color is an apple? That's right, cyan. Now the first time around, everyone thought it was red or green, and I said it was blue, but I'm thinking I was wrong. Actually, cyan is the actual complement of red. I can use cyan as an underpainting for red and make realistic shadows. Comment your guess below, and subscribe for more watercolor.
I started analyzing my references before I start drawing, and it has improved my art so much, and here's how you can do it too. So what does that mean, and how do you analyze a reference? So a good place to start with is negative spaces. I talk about negative spaces in day 13, so in today's video I'm going to focus more on invisible lines. Where I like to start with is usually a straight line that starts on the bottom of your foot that goes all the way up. Do you notice how the edge of this hair strand, the hand, the edge of the hip, and the shoe perfectly line up in one straight line? Just by placing these 4 elements accurately in this one straight line in your own drawing, you'll be able to nail down the proportions and the balance of your drawing pretty much perfectly. So this is just the start, and you can continue looking for these invisible lines in your references, which is basically just studying it. And this will genuinely help you so much and become more accurate and efficient when you are drawing poses. So let me know if this has helped you, and I'll be back tomorrow for another art tip.
You should still learn realism even if you don't want to do realistic work. You want to do stylized anime, manga, cartoon type work. It's still the same thing. Everything comes from reality. I can show you exactly on this eye. If we look and we take a ball here, which is a sphere, not just a circle, I can't go straight across the ball. I have to wrap a rubber band around it just like that. And we wrap it in some satin sheets. Here's our top lid, and here's our bottom lid. I'll go over the top here, and we need to understand one more thing. This eyelid has a depth to it. You go up and over on the corner. And that's going to come in and wrap around to our underside. And same thing with our bottom lid. Right down here, that's going to have a depth to it as well. So if I were an ant walking across this form, I'd come down the forehead, out and over the eyelid, and then down the inside of the eyelid and over the sphere of the ball. Then we come out and over the bottom lid and down under the eye. All we need here is just a iris, just like that. And now we have a basic eye. It's just as easy as that. But we need one more thing, a light source, just like this. And when we cast a light source coming from the top left, what's going to happen is all of these downwards facing planes, the inside of our eyelid, under our eyeball, what happens if we start removing information from this eye? We want to stylize it, right? Well, let's just take away all this unnecessary structural line. We'll take away the inside, all this tone I just put down. We can even take away the corner of the eye. That's an anime eye, right? We could give it a cool little stylized highlight in there, clean up these shapes, and push them to have a bit more of a clear read, because manga or comic panels are supposed to have the most graphic read possible. Here's our ball of the eye again, and what's going to happen is the same thing. We're going to have one top lid come over, and the other bottom lid right here. And then the same thing, let's apply a little light source to it. We'll get a little shadow up here and fill in this pupil if we want, even give it a little bit of eyelash. And I always kind of forget that I'm doing a demo and that I need to actually stop just working and tinkering on these when I do them, so we'll stop there. Now again, let's just remove all that excess information. One thing I see very characteristically of anime eyes is they have lots of highlights in the pupil that don't make any sense, but I guess it just makes the form pop even more. And we really keep cleaning it up so that there's no information other than what's absolutely necessary. And you can push these shapes much more, but only if you understand them. And you understand that everything comes from form, from the three-dimensional shape of it, and how light hits us gives us shapes. And then we can stylize those shapes.
The way you feel. One kiss is all it takes. Falling in love with me.
That's a great question, and the answer is that I use color theory. One way to pick shadows is by picking colors that are opposite to each other on the color wheel. These are known as complementary colors. When you mix complementary colors, you should get a brown that works well as a nice rich shadow. When I used green in the red drawing and purple in the yellow drawing, I was using complementary colors. The other way to pick shadow colors is by using a cool color, because shadows are generally cool rather than warm. If you're trying to darken a color that's already cool, try using a different cool color. This is why I used blue in the green drawing and purple in the blue drawing.
Always afraid to take the first step, because all you see is every negative thing 10 miles down the road. You can do anything you want. You are bound by nothing. What are you passionate about? What do you want?
My name in the sand. Talk to myself for hours. Say things you don't understand. I can take myself dancing, and I can hold my own hand. Yeah, I can love me better than you can. Paint my nails.
If I only had 30 minutes a day to learn how to draw, I would spend 15 of them just sitting down and looking at art. It's not enough to just sit down and draw out of our minds. We need to intake new information. Drawing is like problem solving. It's like solving a puzzle. Each drawing is a unique challenge. So when we look at, or even better, copy a master drawing, what we're doing is seeing how someone better than us came up with creative solutions to the problems that we're going to encounter. For example, this cast is in a dynamic position and it has a tremendous feeling of form or three-dimensionality. And the way that this artist conveys that is by wrapping each of these lines around these basic forms. So this chin itself is basically just an egg or a sphere. And each of these lines is curving and pulling around it very delicately. Don't just look at something and think, wow, that's really good. I guess I'll never be that good. Zoom in on it and think, how did the artist make this and how can I recreate that? Maybe I need to draw slower or more delicate or softer. You wouldn't want to learn that feeling of form or three-dimensionality from this Sargent drawing, because Sargent isn't as good at form as a lot of other artists are. But what Sargent is good at is the composition of the whole image and balancing his values, the very light lights and dark darks. Spend time zooming in and thinking, how did they make this and how can I make this? Drawing and sculpture are all the exact same thing, and I'm going to prove it to you guys. And the first step of any sculpture is to do a drawing on your block of stone, so let's get that done. We know that the face turns from front to sides at the cheekbones. That's where our head goes straight back. So that's going to be our corner right here. Now we only have so much stone here, so I'm just going to mark out the general shape of the hair and where it pulls down into the neck. This is how I'd start my drawings too. You already know the rules. We pull the center line down the face. It might sound weird, but somebody who has a lot of drawing skill can actually jump right into sculpture and feel pretty comfortable as long as they think about drawing and sculpture in a form-based three-dimensional way, not just photocopying it with like the grid method or whatever. Okay, I think I got a pretty decent idea of where Mr. David's gonna fit onto this block of stone, so now we gotta carve him out. We gotta get rid of all that excess stone. Now on a sculpture, if we want to carve something in, we just carve it in, we hit it with our chisel. But if Michelangelo wants to make this pupil dark, he doesn't have a way of doing that without paint, so he actually carves into the pupil and pushes it inwards to make it a shadow. And we're just doing the exact same thing in reverse. Anywhere that we put a shadow, we're pushing in, we're carving into that block of stone. We can think of it this way. When I take my charcoal and I put it on the paper, it doesn't leave charcoal, it pushes in the form. That's a indentation into there. It's like we've done this visor shape, and then all we have to do is just add a little bit of clay to bring out this nose under here. And we know that this area is the front of our head, and then we hit the cheekbone, and this is the side of our head. So now we need to find this side area and give it the appropriate value or cut it into the form enough. And now that we have this face carved out, we can use sandpaper to soften the transitions between areas and make more subtle gradations. And if we want to round how hard this transition on the cheekbone is, all we have to do is roll our marks with the form and add a transitionary value right on the edge. It's not softening it, I'm just adding an extra plane. And working this way is just so exciting because I need to push the nose in a little bit. Okay, I just take a little bit of tone onto my stump or whatever drawing tool I'm using. This works in any medium, and I just put it down and push and pull on it like clay. I'm not beholden to a photo, I'm sculpting, I'm making something real. And all these curls, yes, they're there, but if we go one at a time, we're just gonna be overwhelmed. Nobody can handle just drawing all these curves, and that's not what any sculptor is gonna do either. They're going to round out the surface around the head first, and then they have an easier surface to carve those curls into. And I think I've hit a limit here. I need to push further into the form, but I don't have the values to do it. So I'm adding a darker black to cut deeper into my ball of clay. And I can pull this ear forward from the mist now that I have enough values to do it. And now that we have much more context, it's easier to place the eyes and use our dark value to pull and define these areas. And the further that we get into our painting, the smaller the scale the work becomes. We go from using the sledgehammer down to fine grit sandpaper. So let's zoom out and see how close we got it from our block of stone.
If you're not using a wet palette when you're painting, then you're wasting a lot of paint. In this video, I left some white acrylic gouache on my wet palette when I went to go make dinner, and an hour later, it was still usable. To make a wet palette, you need a tray that has some depth to it. It can be any size you want, and it doesn't have to be porcelain like the one I use. I just really like how porcelain looks. First, lightly mist your tray with water, and then place a paper towel on top. Then you want to saturate the paper towel with water and get it as wet as you can without it pooling with water. Make sure to pour out any excess water if you add too much. Finally, add some parchment paper on top. The one I'm using I got from the dollar store. Now you're done! When I discovered the wet palette method, I was so mad at myself for not finding it sooner since I had wasted so much paint in the past. This will save you so much money.
A lot of people in my last post asked how I studied anatomy, so here's how I do it. The number one resource I would suggest for artists starting out learning anatomy is Proko's Anatomy series. He breaks down each of the body parts in a very digestible way and shows the function, how to draw it, facts, and also some exercises you could do to help learn it. And it's definitely useful to focus on one certain body part at a time. For instance, you focus on the arms and then the legs and then the torso. This will make it more digestible. I also supplement my learning by reading anatomy books like Morpho-Anatomy for Artists or Bridgman's Constructive Anatomy. And my number one is Anatomy for Sculptor. It shows the body in all different directions and will definitely help when trying to identify muscles and reference it. But one important thing is you need to actually write notes and you actually need to draw what you see. By actually drawing these, it helps improve your muscle memory and helps you learn them a lot more than just looking at the pictures. And another big way to learn this is find references online and then try to identify where the muscles are. Some of these are definitely incorrect, but I'm still looking at landmarks and looking at different body types and trying to identify these important muscles so I can learn how to draw them. Looking at muscles and trying to work out where the muscles are and what they look like will help you the most. I also study artists I admire and trying to find the anatomy in their drawings and see how they stylize parts of the body. And try to make it fun for yourself too. I ended up making a quiz in my sketchbook that has a whole answer key. And if you're not understanding something, definitely try to look at real people and also look at different angles. Anatomy for sculptors helps so much at seeing muscles in different angles and seeing what it may look like on an actual person. Right now I'm working on a digital and coherent version of my notes and putting them on my Twitter @Ulaine. But please use these to do your own studies and learn these on your own as well. Don't just read these and think that you've mastered the anatomy. I cannot stress how important it is to look at real models and look at books and draw them and try to understand them. Those are my anatomy tips. Please go look at the artists I suggest rather than some of the questionable ones I've seen on here. I know anatomy is super scary and super intimidating, but once you get started, stuff like this becomes a lot easier and you'll find that your anatomy and art in general gets 100 times better. So hopefully that helps.